stop.
Where was where's Sanatana? Where's Bhagavan? It's the same woman.
Where is Bhagavan? Where is Krishna Dasa? Where is Lord Garuda Govinda?
I will smash my head against the rock and enter into the fire. Where will I find Lord Garuda, the reservoir of all wonderful qualities?
Being unable to obtain the association of Lord Garuda, accompanied by all of these devotees in whose association he performed his pastimes, Narottam Das simply weeps.
So today is the Disappearance Day of Srila Madhvacarya. It was said that many years ago, actually, in the 12th century, a long time ago, Madhvacarya's mother and father, they performed very, very austere, severe austerities for 12 years because they wanted to get a special son who could deliver everyone from their suffering condition. Of course, the suffering condition is the soul's separation from Krishna. So they were both these parents were very great devotees of the Lord. They worshipped the deity and the duty. They were always absorbed in chanting the Lord's holy name. At this time, actually, there was an unrest amongst the demigods. Why was there unrest amongst the demigods? Because the demigods were witnessing that there was this incredible prominence of impersonal and Buddhist philosophies just spreading throughout the world, throughout India especially. So they were very concerned about this. So they all came before Lord Vishnu, Lord Brahma and some of the leading demigods. They came before Lord Vishnu. And they presented this problem in the world that pure Vaishnavas or worship of Krishna and devotion for Krishna was gradually being overtaken by this impersonal and Buddhist philosophies which were just rapidly spreading. So Lord Vishnu, he just surveyed, he just looked over all the assembly of demigods present, and it is said that suddenly his eyes just fell on Vayu. Vayu is the wind god. And Vishnu said to him, "O Vayu, I would like you to incarnate on the earth as Madhva and establish my personal form as the last word in the absolute truth. You must exhibit the pastimes of a great preacher of bhakti and guide my devotees and defeat all opposing concordant philosophies." So Vayu, he was very humbly and immediately accepted this mission that was given to him by the Supreme Lord. So soon after, in 1238, this incarnation of Vayu appeared from his mother's womb. He was given, first of all, was given the name Vasudeva. And the astrologers actually predicted that this child was actually an incarnation of the wind god and would establish throughout the world the philosophy of personalism, devotion and love for the Supreme Lord Krishna. So, he had some pastimes when he was young, and these pastimes, the news of these pastimes, they just spread, throughout the villages, and everyone was very enthralled by this young personality, Madhvacarya. Actually, he was an amazing personality. Actually, it said that at 2 years old, there's a story in his autobiography that his father was a very poor Brahmin, and one day this Madhvacarya, he mystically turned a bag of tamarind seeds into gold coins so his poor father could pay off some debt that he was going to. And it said that when his mother called him, he could suddenly appear there in one jump. So he had this kind of mystical kind of power. Actually, he was also a partial incarnation. Was it Hanuman or Bhima? It said when he was 3 years old, he took off on this holy pilgrimage. He was only a little boy, 3 years old. And he went on his personal pilgrimage at all the local temples. And it is said that he was personally escorted by the Lord himself. The little Lord took him by the hand and escorted him round to all these temples. And as he grew up, he soon became known as one who possessed just unusual strength and power, extraordinary intellectual power, and also he was just extremely beautiful and lustrous. And at school he was always come first in all the different events, whatever it was, running, swimming, wrestling, weightlifting, and no one could defeat him in wrestling. No, wrestling is one of the Vaishnava sports. And even when he was challenged by a large group of boys, he defeated them all. And he never studied his schoolwork. He never studied. But he always got like 100% perfect. And he's also known as a musical genius. And he had this amazing, beautiful voice, which just enthralled audiences. And even at the age of just 4 years old, he defeated a very famous scholar in a public debate. And at the age of 5, he took initiation, both Diksha and Brahminical initiation. Then at the age of 12 years old, just a young boy, he picked up a stick. You know, the sadhus and the sannyasis used to carry these sticks. And he picked up a stick and he approached his father and he told him, I have finished my studies of scriptures, so I'll preach the Vaishnava conclusions throughout the land, and I will refute all the philosophies of impersonalism. And his father, he said to him, as it is impossible for a dry stick to become a living tree, it is impossible for a small boy like you to preach the Vaishnava Siddhanta and defeat Mayavadi philosophers. It's discouraging him. But hearing this, Madhava replied, my dear father, by the mercy of the Lord, it is not impossible for this stick that I am holding to become a huge tree. Similarly, by the Lord's mercy, a young boy like me can preach and defeat Mayavadis. Now after saying this, he took that stick, that dry stick, and he stuck it in the ground. And immediately, to everyone's surprise, it grew into this gigantic banyan tree. There's a lot of mystical things going on. Then at the age of 12, despite strong protest from his father, he just renounced the world. He left home, took sannyas initiation, and began traveling around, dedicating his life to spreading the ultimate truth of Bhakti Yoga, devotional service to Krishna. And so this Madhvacarya's mission, it was orchestrated by the Lord's desire to bring people to this pure Vaishnava Dharma. And so there's a whole evolution that took place. If we study history, 2,500 years ago, people began slaughtering innocent animals for food. And they were justifying this act by misconstruing the writings from the Vedas. The Vedas, in the olden Vedic times, they used to get an old cow and they would offer it into the fire to prove the potency of the chanting of the mantras and the authenticity of the yoga. And this cow would give up its life and the soul would take on a heavenly form, a new body. So they used that to justify slaughtering thousands of innocent animals. And they started rapidly giving up the Vedic vegetarian diet and they became like meat eaters. So Lord Vishnu incarnated as Lord Buddha. And one of his prime missions was to draw people's mind away from the Vedas, which they were misinterpreting, and teach them, you could call sub-religious principles, such as non-violence, vegetarianism. Then after this, in history, Krishna sent Lord Shiva in the form of a Brahmana called Sankaracharya, who re-established people's faith in the Vedas by teaching this philosophy of impersonalism, thus bringing people from Buddhism to impersonalism. And then he sent Ramanujacharya. He appeared in 1017. And then Madhvacarya, he appeared in 1238 to bring people from this impersonalism to personalism, to bring them back to the real essence of loving devotional service to Krishna. And then, of course, Krishna came as Lord Chaitanya to establish the religion for this age, the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. So it was this whole plan of the Lord to bring people back. This is that verse about in society, when they go off the track and they lose direction, and he becomes himself and he sends his representatives to re-establish the principles of religion. So after this Sankaracharya, who was propagating this impersonal philosophy, had travelled all over India, spreading this impersonalism, and Madhvacarya, he travelled all over India, defeating this impersonal philosophy and preaching personalism, devotion to Krishna. So he received some very hot, you could say, hot opposition from orthodox extremists and impersonalists and Mayavadis. That he was very successful in his preaching. His influence actually spread far and wide. There's scholars from all over India were just stunned by this extraordinary genius, Madhva. And his disciples' numbers, they just grew and grew. And he was just so powerful at defeating impersonalists, Mayavadis, Jains, Buddhists, logicians. He converted them all into devotees of Krishna. Actually, no mundane philosophers or people representing other groups could stand in his presence. He was just too powerful and too expert at defeating them and establishing the real Siddhanta. Actually, while he was touring South India, he was challenged by this lineal successor to Sankaracharya, Vijaya Sankara Swami. And he was Sankaracharya, as I said, he was the original propounder of this monistic and personal philosophy. And apparently it was a very fierce battle took place in the form of a philosophical debate. And Madhvacarya defeated him in the midst of a huge crowd who had gathered. On another occasion it is said that he, while addressing an assembly of learned scholars, Madhvacarya began explaining 100 meanings of each of the 1,000 names of Lord Vishnu. And after some time, they begged him to stop, admitting they didn't have the intelligence to comprehend his elaborate explanations. So he wrote a commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, and actually he wanted to present it to Srila Vyasadeva as a tribute to him. You know, Srila Vyasadeva, he was residing way up in the Himalayas, and it's Madhvacarya. Yeah, lives in a cave up there. I think he's still living there. We can't always have his darshan. Had to be a special personality for him to reveal himself. So Madhvacarya, he began his journey on foot, walking high up into the Himalayas. But he had some of his disciples there. Actually, they said that while he was traveling, this fierce tiger attacked one of his disciples. Madhvacarya immediately just pounced on that tiger, and a fierce battle took place. Madhvacarya was so powerful, he could even wrestle a tiger. However, after some time, the tiger just ran off in fear with his tail between his legs. So at one point during this journey, just before he reached the hermit where Vyasadeva was staying, he stopped and he prepared himself to meet Srila Vyasadeva. He observed complete silence, complete fasting for 48 days. And then he ventured up to see Vyasadeva. And on seeing Srila Vyasadeva, Madhvacarya just fell. He just fell flat on the ground before Srila Vyasadeva and all of his obeisances. They said that Srila Vyasadeva was sitting in meditation there, seated on a black deerskin mat. Madhvacarya, he always had Srila Vyasadeva. He always thought of him as his instructing spiritual master throughout his whole life. And he'd been meditating on him. Now he was fully in the presence of Srila Vyasadeva himself. And he was just taking the dust from Srila Vyasadeva's lotus feet, which were adorned with these auspicious symbols. And Madhvacarya just placed those lotus feet of Srila Vyasadeva on his head. It's a sign of just completely surrendering. And Vyasadeva, he stood up and he just lifted up Madhvacarya, just like a father might pick up a small child. And he just embraced him so affectionately. And Madhvacarya prayed, "Oh my dear Lord Srila Vyasadeva, wherever I may be, let me always remain close to you by being absorbed in thought of you." Then Madhvacarya presented his Bhagavad Gita commentary to Srila Vyasadeva, which received Srila Vyasadeva's approval. Then Srila Vyasadeva himself, he he asked Madhva, it said that Srila Vyasadeva blessed Madhvacarya with full realization of the full meaning of the Vedanta Sutra and blessed him with these deep realizations and deep enlightenment. Then Vyasadeva personally gave Madhva a special Shalagram Shila to worship. And he told him, I want you to write a commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. So he was, Madhvacharya was really happy. He received personal darshan and also instructions of Srila Vyasadeva. And sometime later, Madhvacharya, while still in his 20th year, again visited Srila Vyasadeva back there. And at that time, Srila Vyasadeva gave him 8 Shalagram Shilas to worship. So we know that if you've ever travelled to South India, there's certainly devotees there of Madhvacharya. I mean, he founded what's called the Krishna Mutt, where he installed this beautiful deity of Gopal. Now this deity was a very special deity. This deity of Gopal was previously worshipped by Queen Rukmini. Queen Rukmini is one of Krishna's queens in Dwarka. And it was worshipped thousands of years ago. So what happened is that Arjuna had hidden this deity in a place near Dwarka. And over thousands of years, this deity had been covered by clay. And it was a clay or tilak, clay. And one day some merchants, they picked up this large, massive clay or gopi chandam, this tilak from Dwarka, and they didn't know the deity was inside. And they loaded it on the ship. However, what happened is off the coast of Udupi, a storm, it forced the ship onto the edge of the coral reef. And Madhva, he just happened to be bathing there at the ocean. He saw the ship. So he tied his chadar onto his danda, and began waving it in the air, like this, trying to guide the ship off the reef. And at that time, it is said that he mystically, deeply breathed in, and miraculously the ship that was stuck on this reef, just what happened is an opening in the reef happened, and the ship just floated to where Madhva was standing. It's a very mystical thing. Then the storm suddenly disappeared. This is all Krishna's arrangement. You can see meant Madhva was supposed to. It was Krishna guiding this beautiful Gopal deity to Madhvacharya. So the storm suddenly disappeared, and the grateful captain, he offered Madhvacharya, he said, anything he wanted from his cargo, you can take. So Madhva, he chose that big chunk of tilak, that gopi chandam. And as they carried it off the ship, a little piece broke off, and they revealed that inside was this beautiful deity of Gopal. So they laid the deity on the beach, and then 30 disciples, they tried to pick the deity up, but they couldn't move the deity. It was too heavy. The deity was not consenting to be moved. It's only when Madhvacharya himself embraced the deity and lifted him up did the deity consent to be moved. Then Madhva carried that deity. He's so strong. He carried that deity 4 miles to Udupi and restored him in this Sri Krishna Mutt. And then Madhvacarya, again, he instituted very high standards of worship. And whenever Madhva was in a duty, because he was traveling and preaching, but whenever he was in a duty, he would personally perform all the daily worship of that duty. And it's there in a duty, and the surrounding areas in South India, he established 8 temples with 8 deities. And he has 8 sannyasis who perform the direct service in each temple. And then every evening in a duty, there's this big festival. If anyone's been to a duty, well, my son was telling us about this place, a duty, apparently an amazing place. Almost every evening in a duty, there's this big festival, and they bring the deities out on the elephants, and there's musical bands and fireworks, and the beautifully decorated carts carrying the deities are taken around the town in a royal procession, and everyone comes out, and the deities are smiling and benedicting the adoring crowds, and all the residents and pilgrims come there, and they bring offerings for the pleasure of the Lord. Actually, it is said that because of such a pure devotional atmosphere, that India has attained the status of Vaikuntha, the kingdom of God. I know I always have a desire in the back of my mind to go to sometime when I go to India. So our Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya originates with the Madhva Sampradaya. We are, our Pacific line is known as the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya. It's like a whole Pacific succession that descends, and it comes through Madhvacarya. So us Gaudiya Vaishnavas, we share the same philosophical points as Madhvacaryas, including the philosophy of the famous philosopher Chincha Beda Beda Tattva. This idea that everything is simultaneously one and different from the Lord. And Srila Prabhupada will find when we're reading his books, he quotes Madhvacarya hundreds of times in his writings, in his reports, in his lectures, in his conversations. And we know that Lord Chaitanya's most intimate followers, including the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, they thoroughly studied Madhvacarya's works before compiling their own writings. And it's said that, Madhvacarya wrote approximately 40 books, which include many commentaries on the Upanishads, the Puranas, the Mahabharata. Also, he wrote many devotional songs and handbooks for Vaishnavas, such as the duties and practices of householders and mendicants. He also wrote works concerned with understanding the philosophical processes of the modern world, such as epistemology, ontology, books regarding astrology, performances of ceremonies and rituals, also books on architecture, mathematics. These are originally Vedic sciences. It is said that whatever knowledge we have in the world, whatever it is, medicine, mathematics, science, it originally has its roots coming from the Vedas. Different branches of knowledge have come down through history and filtered into the world today. But all the original knowledge, mathematics, architecture, science, medicine, all originates in the Vedic scriptures. So when Madhvacarya reached his 79th year of age, he decided to depart from this world. This is in 1317. He was satisfied with his mission on earth. He successfully smashed all the propounders of impersonalism and atheistic philosophies. He changed the mood of the people. He brought people from impersonalism and Buddhism, brought them to the pure Vaishnava Dharma, this love and devotion to Krishna. He wrote so many books, he had so many thousands of disciples. He sufficiently spread the glories of the Supreme Lord, love and devotion and service to him. So he decided it was time for him to leave the world. So he began preparing for his leaving the world. He initiated several of his leading disciples into sannyas. He installed leaders to take charge of the 8 months, assigned various disciples with the responsibility of carrying on establishing his writings and his preaching work. Then it is said that one day he was just seated on his asana in the temple, surrounded by hundreds of disciples. And he's reciting some verses from his favorite Upanishads. It said that his face appeared very charming, with sublime smile. His voice was very sweet, powerful, very pure. So he was just speaking this beautiful, sweet verses from his favorite Upanishad. And suddenly they could hear celestial voices coming from the heavens, proclaiming Madhvacarya's wonderful glories. And it is said that drums began resounding, and then they all looked up. All the disciples looked up, and they saw showers of flowers coming down from celestial beings from the heavens. These flowers just started coming down from the heavens, and everyone became very jubilant and trance and ecstasy, and the flowers just kept coming and coming. And the flowers soon, they just piled up, completely covered. He was sitting on his asana there in the courtyard. The flowers just completely covered Madhvacarya's body. And then after some time, 2 intimate disciples came forward and they started brushing the flowers off. Their Gurudev, their beloved Gurudev. And they discovered that Madhvacarya had left his body and departed from this world, gone back to the spiritual world. Shiva Madhvacarya.